Hello, everyone. It's Matthew Hegum again, one of the co-founders of the Accounting Alchemy Network, and I'm back again with Ingrid. I think it's been a while, Ingrid, since you and I have actually co-hosted, so I'm really excited to be back in conversation with you today. And we actually have a really awesome guest, Ryan Knowles. We'll learn a little bit more about Ryan in a moment. He's going to be talking about something that I actually have no knowledge of. So I'm really curious, like what's actually going to come up here. But for those of you who are new to the community, just a reminder, this is the Accounting Alchemy Network. We are a grassroots movement inspiring the current and future generations of accounting professionals to prioritize people and planet over profit. We have an amazing website and an incredible community of organizers behind the scenes doing great work. So if you're interested in learning more, check out our website. Check out the Get Involved section. We've got some awesome content up there. And again, if you are new to the community, make sure that you subscribe to our newsletter. And also, we just launched a high-low, which I'm super excited about. If you don't know what that is, it's sort of a community gathering space where we can share and dialogue and continue the conversations that we have in this space in that space asynchronously. So that's all I'm going to say about the Accounting Alchemy Network for now. I'm going to pass the ball over to Ingrid to introduce herself and our guests. Over to you, Ingrid.
Thank you, Matthew. Yes, I'm really, really excited to get to talk with Ryan today. Ryan, I'm trying to remember what the first time we met, if it was when you joined the Accounting Alchemy Network, or I think we connected briefly on LinkedIn before that. But when you joined the Accounting Alchemy Network and I went and looked at your website, I was like, wait, you're doing what now? So Ryan's business is a worker-owned cooperative, and you recently shifted into being a worker-owned cooperative. But then on top of that, your firm niches in social justice organizations. So like I found out those things about you and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to crawl inside your brain and see how it's working. So I'm so grateful that we finally got to set up a time that we get to connect. And I would love it if you can give us, to start off, just a brief introduction to yourself and the work you're doing. And then Matthew and I have tons of questions for you.
Okay, great. I'm looking forward to it. um, I'm Ryan. I'm a small accounting firm owner. We're based in Buffalo, although we work remotely, so there's some employees here and some elsewhere. There's four of us in total. Uh, and and so we're technically not a worker-owned cooperative yet, but we're on that journey. We act like it now, even if the legal structure doesn't quite look like that. Um, we do all. I mean, bookkeeping services. We do month-to-month accounting for organizations, large and small, and we don't do any tax or test work. Even though I have a CPA, we just we're focusing on this. And we have about 2/3 of our revenue is from nonprofits, specifically social justice oriented nonprofits, and then the other third is just kind of small mom and pop retail, local business, creative agencies and that kind of thing. So, I don't know if that's a good
Well,
of a
I would
rabbit
love
trail.
to
We
hear
will
about the
dive into
journey.
everything. So,
Yeah,
sure.
so I hear that you're not technically a legally worker-owned cooperative yet, though I know that a lot of accounting firms have thought about going in that direction at one point or another, and they haven't really known where to start. I know for myself, back when I had employees, I'm back to being a one-woman show at this point because I decided I preferred that. But when I did have a team, I decided, okay, we need this to be an employee-owned company. And the people that we were bringing on with the intention of having it be employee-owned. And what did that look like? And it was only when my most recent partner in the business got really sick and needed to step down that I was like, wow, we built all this up just to, have it kind of peter out with no fault of anyone. And I'm really curious, like, what size is your team? What inspired you to take this particular path? And what are the steps that you're taking to get there?
There's a lot of questions. Let's do it. So the size of the team, there's four of us. We've somewhere between two and six. Some part time and so we've kind of and settled on to four of us now. We've kind of consolidated some work. We had little pieces hanging out here or there. So now that there's a good team of four of us, um, and that was the easy one. What was that? How did we get here? That's too
Yeah.
much fun.
So what inspired you to go
Oh,
this
inspire me.
direction,
Okay,
first
yes.
off?
Do you want the 20-year story or the 2-year story?
A little bit of
Um,
both.
okay. Um, so I've it's definitely from a social justice perspective. We'll take a step back eventually on mechanics of cooperatives, and it doesn't have to be that perspective. It could be, this is beneficial for everybody involved. But for me, that's where it started. So I've kind of, over the course of my life, shifted, I would say from a, growing up, more conservative values household, work hard to get ahead kind of thing, to, now in, where I am now, where it's like, oh, there are, systems and structures in society that allow some people to get ahead and not other people to get ahead. And so those structures have allowed me to get ahead. And at least in terms of, having the independence to do my own thing, like to, have the resources and family and knowledge and, status in society to be able to take the risk to start my own accounting firm. And, that's not available for everybody. And that's true. I mean, that's true in accounting, but then also outside of accounting. Who starts businesses, who are entrepreneurs, and that skews to, a certain social class and demographic. And so that was my motivation, to kind of, yeah, share that, privilege and wealth, especially in, you know national politics today. It could be, the opposite message a lot. There's a lot of individualistic thinking, and yeah, get ahead on your own, and what could I get from me in terms of building wealth. And so my focus has been trying to get away from the national and get a lot more, local and community based, and like, okay, how could I affect the people that are closest to me that I work with. Um, and and so, and so that's my inspiration. And so how I got to actual worker cooperative, we had a couple of worker owned cooperative clients. And so that's what introduced me to this concept and idea of employee ownership and, empowerment for them. And so, over the past 5 years, I've been thinking about, like, okay, how would this work? And, how would we get there? And what does this mean for everybody? What does it mean for me? And this thing that I've kind of already started building, and now I'm going to transition to a group of us. So that's, I think there was a third question in there too, but I'll stop there.
So I don't remember what the third question is. Do you remember, Matthew, what I asked before?
No, I think it
But
was
I'm
just
sure
a
you have a question.
well, I do have a question. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let me take the ball on this one. So Ryan, earlier you mentioned being a CPA, and there's a lot of conversation right now in the industry about sort of the talent issue, right? The talent challenges, right? There's not enough people coming into the industry. The CPA designation isn't attractive enough, certainly for younger people, and in particular, I think in a sort of state where young people want to be led by values and do work in the world that's causing, creating positive change. And I think that, per your client type and sort of this concept of the workers co-op, that's something that you're doing in this role. But I'm just kind of curious, like what was your before you got to this point, like for yourself, what was your journey to the point where you realize, oh, this is the kind of work I really want to be doing, and I'm asking from that lens of, hey, there are a lot of people who are trying to decide, like, is this a profession that's even worth getting involved in, and can I actually make a difference here? I'm hearing that in your journey you sort of changed your mind or perspective on some things, and so I'd like to kind of put a flashlight on that a bit.
Um, yeah, it's, I don't think there's any, like, one particular moment, of that journey. Who, it's hard to count at this point. I guess I became a CPA 20 years ago, and I've done some other things on the side. I left accounting for a little while and came back. That's a story for another podcast. Um, and 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 yeah, I think it's more, it's reflective of the work that I want to do, and then, my beliefs in politics as well. From my own personal journey. There's it, and this sacrifice doesn't have to happen. This is what's happened for me, if we're in this individualistic sense where, oh, we could be, a partner at a small or a mid-sized accounting firm, make two, three, $400,000 a year. But that's on kind of the backs of the people that are making, 60,000 a year and working, 3,000 hours or something obscene. And so there's definitely a choice to not choose that path. That is a structure that, exists now and will probably exist for a while as that gets worked out, but that's part of the issue. That's why, this industry is having issues and that structure is failing because we can't attract new people in to feed that model and have partners make that kind of money. And so just changing our expectations a little bit. And also I think the amount of work that we put in, I work 40 hours. I think 40 hours a week is a lot of work for a week. And so I try to get much less than that. I'm not in this to, work 60, 70, 80 hours, regardless of what time of year it is. And my employees don't want to do that either. And I don't want to create an environment where, my fellow owners, I guess, is, they would eventually be, is aiming for that, for those like large salaries and those large hours. Is like, let's focus on each other and our families and what matters. And I think it maybe took me stepping outside of the industry and coming back. To maybe recognize that and figure out what I wanted to build. I think also, the social justice niche, it kind of, it's happenstance. You pick up some clients here and some clients there, like, oh, wow, I love what these organizations are doing. Build a practice around this. And so then you see the people working in those organizations and what they're doing and the good work and how much they're working, how much they're sacrificing. And that has also given me a lot of perspective as well. It's easy to be in the accountant world or in the corporate world, the finance world, and you only talk to these people and see these things, and this is how everybody's working and what they're making. And so adding that separate perspective has contributed a lot to my journey and inspiration.
Yeah, thanks for that. And a follow-up question too, just, and this actually comes from your bio. There were some things in there that were really intriguing. One of the things that you said was 5 years of experience fighting the corporate status quo of the accounting industry. And I think you kind of hint at it a little bit in this regard. And I think part of what we talk about at the Accounting Alchemy Network on this path towards creating more of a regenerative accounting professionals, creating more humane workplaces, and I think you pointed to that. But can you share a little bit more about what you mean by the 5 years of experience fighting the corporate status quo? Like, what were you actually fighting against, and what did that look like for you?
I think fighting is probably a strong word. I think it's exactly that, like the conversation we were just having. It's like, I don't want to do this. I want to create something else. And so I want to like do accounting because I love doing accounting. But I want to do it in an environment that works for everybody and is not stressful and, has a balance between, how much we're working and making and the contributions we're making to society. So that's my fight. And my fight with a lot of this stuff, my fight with capitalism in general is not necessarily, going out and being an activist. It's like, okay, here's how I'm going to live my life and, affect the people that are close to me and support organizations that I want to work with. So fight is a loose term. Yeah.
I remember the other question as you were answering the previous question. We're starting to like hint around it. I would love to hear, so as you're on the journey of becoming a worker-owned cooperative, what does that business structure look like, both from the legal standpoint as well as from the practical, everyday human standpoint? Like, how does it look and feel to your team? What are the values and the practices that you have in place that make it so that you mentioned, like, even though we're not legally a worker-owned cooperative yet, we're acting like we are. So what does that look like to act like you are? And what is the eventual legal structure that you're going for, recognizing that there might be more than one kind of worker-owned cooperative or more than one way of going about it? So I would love if you would kind of break down those logistical elements and cultural elements for us.
Okay. I will start with the legal side of things is something that there are a lot of different options you could do. You could have an LLC, and that's super flexible. You could have a partnership agreement that says essentially whatever it is you want it to say. There's also an actual corporation called that you could do that's specifically for cooperatives. It's not a C corp. Confusingly, I can't remember what the letter is, but so that's an option as well. And I recognize too, for the audience here that there are going to be state and legal issues for accounting firms that are doing a test work. If you're a CPA firm, there are really strict guidelines about who could have ownership and what the name could be, and that sort of thing. So we're because we don't do any test work, it's more straightforward for us. Anybody could be an owner in this accounting firm. So let me I had a couple things I wanted to note on. So cooperatives in general, just to, I guess, back up a little bit, there's a whole bunch of different types of cooperatives. You could have, worker-owned cooperatives and producer-owned cooperatives, and other membership types. Worker-owned cooperatives specifically, roughly each person that works there has one share and one vote. And so that's the ownership side of it. And that's not usually for new employees. There's like a phase-in period. And so, everybody could vote on whether they should be a member of the worker-owned cooperative. So there's a lot of, kind of initial corporate setup stuff that comes along with that. And the stuff I'm going to say is kind of like my limited experience. There are a lot of different ways that you could go about doing this, as you can imagine. There's a lot of different ways to just as many different ways as there is to run a business, there's a ways to run and organize a worker-owned cooperative. One of the principles of worker-owned cooperatives is, kind of democratic control and management. And so that could come either in there's a small team that's working and deciding on things cooperatively. So, they sit down and make all the either the small decisions, all the major decisions. And so that there's kind of a spectrum there. It's like, okay, how much does all of the worker owners need to be involved with some of the day-to-day stuff? And how much do they just need to do, their specific job, and there's someone else to kind of manage the day-to-day stuff of the business. For us, and for me, it's been, that's been separated. So the employees, they don't manage much from like a working on your business perspective. I'm still, making a lot of the decisions about how to structure the work and who's working on what clients. And I'm doing all of the sales and the marketing, which software we use, how we, manage projects, reviewing work, all of that still all falls on me. And that's something that works for us. That's probably more personality driven, depend on the organization. And that's something that I would like to, as we, actually formalize things a little bit more, have that be flexible. That personality driven, that works now because of the four of us and what's involved. Some of us want to do that kind of work. I enjoy doing that. And others just want to do their bookkeeping and accounting work. They don't want to have to be thinking about all of these logistical things every day. And so that division works. It also helps that we're really small. We have the flexibility, people could be involved or not involved. As if we grow, or as a worker cooperative in general grows, you need more structures in place. You can't have 100 people in the room, deciding on, which, software to use or whatever the case may be. And so then you would have, typical to a regular corporation, you'd have an annual meeting or quarterly meeting, and, everyone in the worker cooperative would vote on, for board members, to then manage the day-to-day, either that or to appoint executive team and have a CEO to manage things. So it's just being in the organization gives you a vote to then determine, how the structure works. Mm. And so, I tend to think of it now, so starting off a worker-owned cooperative, you usually have a couple of people that are like-minded and want to do this thing and start a business. If it's a conversion, which is a lot of worker-owned cooperatives are result because of conversions, it's like, the accounting industry in general. I've got this firm, I've been leading it for a while, and nobody wants to buy it, and nobody wants to take on partnership responsibilities. Is there some sort of other exit for me? And employee stock ownership programs, worker-owned cooperatives. That's where it becomes a little bit more appealing. It's like, oh, here is this option. These employees, everybody can kind of participate. And instead of just elevating one or two people to partner, everybody could be elevated to an owner. And, that might be an easier buyout for, someone that's trying to retire. That's right. So right now, sorry, all over the place. So the way we work right now, I think of it more of as like a benevolent dictatorship. Employees are happy because, I've created an environment that, people enjoy working in, and we do good work, and we have good benefits and really good flexibility, and we all care about each other. And that comes across not only in the work, but in, the day-to-day interactions. And, me messaging all my employees this morning, say, hey, do you need to take a day off today? It's November 6th for those of us watching this on a recording. And so it's, just those day-to-day. So, employees, at least my employees are, you could almost view it as complacency, or like, hey, this is a really great setup. We don't want to go through all this work to change it. And, I'm trying to kind of, push on them the idea that this works right now, but it might not always be that case. So by having them buy into ownership, or us doing this conversion, kind of gives them more of a long-term security that this is something that they're always going to be able to own and influence, and it's not dependent entirely on me and what my whims are, or what I might need from a personal perspective, or et cetera. If something happens to me, what happens then? The organization can continue to exist. So most of the decision making and the structure hasn't changed much. That being said, we just brought on a new employee because we had someone leave, take a fantastic job at a nonprofit locally, and so we brought in someone new, and my other two employees helped me make that decision. And so that's a kind of an example of, that democratic decision making. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm doing the interviews and decided on a person. It's like, hey, we're all getting together, and we've, interviewed different people, and, looked at all the candidates, and we decided jointly, okay, here's the, the person that we think is best for this job. Now that is a bit of a tangent. That's difficult, probably in a lot of situations, but also because, of my place in society as, a more talkative white male, it's hard to go into those situations and not overexert my influence. And so there's a lot of things that we need to think about in terms of, training for us and how to set stuff up, and how do we make sure it really is democratic and it's not just everyone saying, oh yeah, that's a good idea, Ryan, let's do that.
I want to drill in just a little bit more on that piece specifically. So, because that's how a team makes decisions together under these circumstances is a really important element to focus on. And hearing that your governance model is focused on, like you said, democratic control and management. And like you mentioned, today is November 6th, 2024. So we got election results this morning. And I want to acknowledge that for a very large extent, democracy is a system, where majority rules, and you end up often with almost 50% of the people in any decision potentially being really upset with that decision. And so one of the things that I've been learning about a lot over the last several years is sociocracy and other forms of governance and decision making. And the way that you're describing this, of like really allowing your team members to weigh in on that decision of this new hire, I'm curious, like, are people actually voting yay or nay? And if somebody is like, well, that person's voting nay, but they're outnumbered, so we're going to go with the yay anyway. Is that actually how it's going, or is there more discussion there and a bit more, I guess, listening and real human interaction? It sounds like you do a really great job of taking care of the human needs of your team, asking them if they need a mental health day on election day. So, yeah, just I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's definitely more of the latter. It's, um, and the vision would be to get to a point where, yeah, we don't need to have, okay, 50% of the vote is, the decision that we're making. It's definitely more of a, consensus building model. And I don't have a ton of experience with that, and like, just besides what comes naturally. And so it is something that, as we put more legal structures in place and come to an agreement on, okay, how do we manage things, how do we make decisions, trying to build some of that stuff in there is definitely a goal of mine. And we probably all need training on it, because it's easy when we all get along and we all think similarly, but as we invite other people into this venture that might think a little differently on some things, okay, how do we manage those relationships and manage different viewpoints and build consensus over not every single small decision, but the big decisions. Okay, who are we going to hire? Who we have this big client that we're bringing on. Do we align in terms of values, or how do we want to restructure work, and how do we determine each other's salaries? That's been all, and I will acknowledge I don't know what that looks like. I've so far it's been, hey, I think this should be our salaries for the next year, and everyone's like, that looks good, which I don't really think is sustainable going forward. It's working now, but just getting more training and building this, and there's a ton of organizations to help with this, locally and nationally. There are worker-owned cooperative groups to help with legal structure and that give training and advise on different practices. So I'm not here just doing this by myself. I know that these resources exist, and when we're ready to continue to move forward, we know where to find them.
Okay, I have a couple of questions as a follow-up. I want to go back a little bit to this team piece, because one of the things that is true is that not everybody believes the same things, right? And so in the process of decision making and sharing thoughts, opinions, ideas, advice on what to do next, obviously there's going to be perhaps some initially conflicting ideas, right? One person wants to go right, one person wants to go left. But at the end of the day, what I think is perhaps, I say perhaps because this can be debated perhaps, but is that the most important thing is values alignment, right? That there's at least a set of core things that this group of people stands for, no matter what direction we're going, right? So how did you find these people that are in alignment with your values, regardless of the fact that they're different people? Like what was that process like of finding those people for you?
Luck
Okay.
so far.
Check.
Yeah. Um, and even the people that have left, or the people that have been part-time, it's everyone. And no, I mean some of them it's networks that I know, and so you meet people in certain environments, like a worker cooperative conference, or whatever the case may be, or a mixer that one of the social justice organizations are having. But we have hired two people now nationally, just like through a LinkedIn or an Indeed ad. And I think you attract certain people. I mean, in the job description, it's very clear, some of the stuff we stand for and the organizations that we work for. So you're probably not going to find, diametrically opposed values by, hiring in that way. And then some of it is building consensus. I think it's, we have different views, and, okay, we might say left or right. But there are a lot of different paths in between left and right. And if it's left this time, maybe it's like, okay, what is causing you to want to go right? And okay, let's think about how to incorporate that into our future decision making. And maybe we could choose a different path that, kind of aligns with everybody a little bit more going forward. And so that I have a lot to learn there for sure.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'm not, but
Well, no, but it's helpful because it's, I think one of the challenges that people face in this profession, again, to what I said earlier, is finding the right people to work with, right? In part because there's just not enough new professionals coming to the field. And then a lot of people, a lot of younger and newer talent are sort of stuck in the behemoth structures of the big accounting firms, and they're kind of like slugging their way through to getting their stamp of approval, right? So they're on their path. And of course, that being said, there's a lot of really cool people out there who are maybe coming into the industry in untraditional ways, and so it's sort of an interesting moment from a talent perspective of trying to find that group of people who you can really co-work and co-create with, and part of that is about the values piece. Now, I want to ask another question. It's sort of related to that, but also in acknowledgement of another, I guess, trend that's occurring inside of the industry, and that is around, we have a good number of people, senior level professionals who are nearing their expiration, and whether in their firms and in their work life, and so they're coming out and they're trying to figure out what their exit strategy is. Some of them are just kind of leaving, and that's it. There's sort of this private equity thing going on where people are getting kind of gobbled up and absorbed and restructured and all that. And also, I think there's a sort of a dilemma where people don't want to adopt the firms of the past because they want to create something that's more in alignment with the future. And so I guess my question for you, like in your situation, you were lucky and organized to the degree to find the right people to be a part of this thing. But if I'm a firm owner and I'm at the, nearing the end of my career, and I've got 40, 50, 60 employees in this sort of CPA firm, like what does it look like to say, hey, y'all, maybe a workers cooperative is the option for us to consider here? Like, what does that conversation look like? And how could this perhaps be a viable exit strategy for CPAs who are looking to step out of the profession?
Yeah, I think it's got to be, I mean, if it's a partner group or just a single majority owner, they've got to have a little bit of a vision of what they want to do with it. It can't be, if you're just, kind of sticking with the status quo, it's going to be hard to say, okay, hey, let's try this direction instead. It can't just be like, I've seen this. We had a client that, she wanted to leave and she wanted her organization, she wanted to sell it to her employees, and her employees weren't interested. And she wasn't, she didn't try to get their buy-in. She was just like, oh, this is an exit strategy. Let's just do this. I'll work with the local cooperative, group, and they'll help me with it. And, then I could leave and, I feel good about myself. And that didn't work because, she didn't kind of like foster that with her team and think about like, okay, who might be able to lead this and how do I convince everyone this is a good idea and how do I stick with it to make sure this transition happens? So if you're just in a mode where you just want to exit, I think it'd be a very difficult strategy unless you have internal people that are pushing it on their own. There might be employees that are thinking about this on their own, and then they could lead it, and the person leaving doesn't have to. I think that's probably difficult to find as well. And so, if you still have 5 years, then investigating these things now and thinking about what this means and like talking to organizations now and doing some research and then talking to your employees, like start bringing them into conversations now. You can't just transition leadership and leave one day and now all of a sudden they have to deal with like all these decisions and look at the balance sheet for the first time, and I mean except for initial like sale agreement type stuff, and get introduced to all the different clients that you've been talking to. Like, people really need to be brought into the leadership with this idea of like, okay, here's the vision where I think we want to take this organization. And so it's definitely less of a, sign some paperwork exit strategy and more of a, building into a vision exit strategy.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Now let's flip that over to like the client facing side, right? So how, and I guess my curiosities are sort of multifold, but we'll pick one spot to start. And that is around just, I guess, the perception of value for the customers and working with a workers cooperative or an organization that holds those values. Like, why do customers choose to work with you because of perhaps this sort of different way of working?
I think across all of corporate America, it probably doesn't have a ton of value. It definitely depends on what your niche and your market is. I mean, people see worker-owned cooperative and they don't really think much of it because they don't understand what the structure is. They don't know what that means. Like, okay, this is employee-owned. It's for definitely for a transition or conversion, it would be more like, okay, I have a relationship with this name and with this firm. Okay,
Mm.
selling to his employees, great. I could keep my relationship with this, but I wouldn't think of it in general as a big something you could market to general, like, corporate America, and or to general small businesses, or who are, or individuals. It's definitely more of a niche thing. That being said, it is growing in popularity. There's recent legislation that's been supporting the worker cooperative movement. And there's definitely a lot of positive development in that direction, or in terms of growth of the worker cooperative movement, but it
Mm.
is still very niche. It is a marketing plus for us because of the organizations that we work with.
Yeah.
We're working with social justice focused organizations. Most of them know what worker cooperative is, or at least even if they don't, they just appreciate the fact that we are doing you know justice related stuff within our firm itself.
Mm.
And so it tends to be a little bit of a, help market from a marketing perspective there. But um, even then, it's almost like a nice benefit after the fact. It's like, oh, hey, we are also structured this way. It's for me, it hasn't really been like, oh, let's like push this as a marketing thing and get new clients this way. It's more of a, oh, we get a new client because we do good work with nonprofits and social justice nonprofits, and we care about their missions. That's how we get clients. And then it's like, oh, they also like to know that we're a worker-owned co-op.
I hear you. I hear you. And I do think that there is, just to be clear about it, in my opinion, I think there is a value, right, of being employee owned, a workers cooperative for the customer. So to just put a pin in it, like from your perspective, what is the value? If this is something you're considering, you're like, why would this be the better choice for, aside from perhaps personal values alignment, right? Why would this be the better choice for me to create a workers co-op in this profession versus the alternative? Like, what is the actual value there?
Yeah. Happy employees do better work.
Mm.
And so if you're not stressed out and working a ton of hours, if you love your job and showing up each day and you're valued and cared for, and you're part of something bigger, then you're going to do better work and you're going to care about the work that you're doing and care about your clients. And so, yeah, so clients get better service and better relationships and longer relationships. The workers don't turn over as often. And so, you have a relationship with an accountant, they're going to stick around and you're going to deal with them year after year, just like you would like a, traditional firm owner. And so, yeah, all of those benefits from better service to continuity. And yeah.
I just love what an amazing example this is of all of the things that we're trying to create here in the Accounting Alchemy Network, because you are checking so many of the boxes of the five pillars of regenerative accounting. We've got the governance, the financial, the overall well-being and wellness, and then the fact that you also niche in social justice organizations. We've got the justice, equity, diversity, inclusion element as well. It all demonstrates how this is tied together in a full circle well-being economy, and that it's all an ecosystem, and you are creating a rising tide that raises all ships, and demonstrating how the creation of this well-being within your organization is also attracting the kinds of clients that you want, and it just feeds back into this beautiful sacred reciprocity. These are reciprocal relationships, and it's just so amazing. And I want to touch back on what you were saying earlier around how you kind of were inspired by some of your clients and seeing their worker-owned cooperatives. And you also mentioned there's tons of organizations out there that can help. Let's talk about resources. If other people want to learn more about this, which I'm sure that here in the Accounting Alchemy Network, if somebody's like, okay, so I watched the Lyceum with Ryan, and now I have a ton of questions. Like, we might need to have ongoing conversation in like a social forum or something. What other resources are there? If you have questions, where do you turn? What books, what organizations? Let's give people the bibliography.
Yeah, I typically turn to um, uh, who's the one in Buffalo. It's the kind of thing that's not on the tip of my tongue, but I know they're all there. So Cooperation Buffalo would be my local organization, and there are in most major cities or regions there's some local organization that's working with the cooperatives, And so, there's for more nationally, I think there's the Worker Cooperative Institute. I think there's the Democracy at Work Institute. And a quick Google search, like all the top results is like, okay, and all of those organizations either have a library of resources that you could use from, some recommended books to recommended uh, like partnership agreements and legal structures, and how agreements on how you're going to work together, and some advice on what the tax implications might be, and so there's a ton of resources on those, and then they also tend to have there's one that's for startups. I think is it worker.coop? I can't remember. It's a startup incubator essentially, so like an alternative to the Silicon Valley, tech world, and they only accept. So they have an incubator and they accept worker-owned cooperatives that are looking to scale something. So it wouldn't be like a handful person accounting firm. Like this is like, okay, we're creating this software platform that we plan to scale nationally, and we're gonna have 1,000 worker owner type things. And sorry, so that was one incubator, but a lot of the organizations have seminars or just kind of, I don't know what you would call it, things that you go through to kind of go through all the steps. It's like, okay, and a lot of them are, so it's either, okay, we're starting a new one, so you go through like business plan and how you're going to work together, but then there's a recognition that there are a lot of conversions, and this is like, kind of how a lot of businesses are gonna owners are gonna retire, et cetera, through this, and so there's a big focus on business conversions, and so there's kind of advisory workshops, or just like here's how to support your employee workshops, and I haven't been through all of those, but those all exist at these national and at any of your local organizations, and if you're a local brick and mortar, like everyone's in the right place in the same place, I would definitely recommend the local organization, because then everyone's showing up together, you're all there, you're talking it through. It's a little bit more difficult with us remotely, because it's harder for us to tap into a smaller local organization, even though we will work with the one here in Buffalo. But the national ones do their own as well. They'll do kind of incubators and support for new organizations or conversions. They also have financing. There are organizations that provide financing specifically for worker-owned cooperatives, and it's called non-extractive financing. It's typically how it's structured, and so it would be like almost like a percentage of profits kind of thing. So if you take 5 years and you aren't making anything, you don't have to pay any of the loan back. So it's not going to like take money out of the organization, think private equity, when it's not there to take out, or when it's going to be detrimental to building the organization. And so, all of the larger cooperative incubators and organizations have access to that financing, and then they can recommend, oh, you could get financing from this group of that, so that your employees then, if you really wanted a true kind of buyout, your employees can finance it through one of these non-extractive loans.
Hmm.
And sorry, I don't have the names on the tips of my tongue, but they're a quick Google search away. So
no worries. Yeah, and one thing I want folks to Google. So I met with another one of our community members, Nancy McClellan. I think is how you say her last name. She's the dancing accountant. So of course I had an affinity towards who she is and what she stands for. But one of the things that she specializes in is cooperative accounting work. And I bring that up because she mentioned to me an organization that I'd never heard of, the National Society of Accountants for Cooperatives. So if you Google National Society of Accountants for Cooperatives, you'll find, I think it's ncacoop.org. You'll find some really interesting, I think, resources there for other professionals who are working in this space and doing really important work.
And they are, I guess, they are more broader cooperative focus. So like they'll do like farmer cooperatives and utility cooperatives. And so I've found less value for us being so small, doing real small organizations. They tend to be like larger type things, but it's certainly a great resource for doing that type of work.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, I met her a few months ago and just hadn't had the time to go back to all the resources until I was thinking about our call, and I checked out their website. I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So yeah, please defer to Ryan's insight on that, more informed than I. But what I do want to ask though, I know we're getting up near the top of the hour, but I want to go back to something that sort of came up for me. And this is, I think, a really important conversation in the context of being a regenerative accounting professional, being focused more towards the future of what's possible and having a positive impact, on people's businesses. And that is around the topic of specifically about money, right? I mean, what we do is we tend to the money, right? We watch it, we monitor it, we run reports off of it. We hand those reports to people and say, hey, here's what's happening with the money. Here's what I think should happen with the money. Here's where the money is going, right? And one of the things that we talk about at the Accounting Alchemy Network is this idea of stewarding the money story, right? Where accountants are a part of that, are one of the stewards of this money story, this narrative that we carry with us about, okay, yes, I did spend the money that way, but what are the values behind that, or what are we expressing as our core values based on how we manage this resource that we have? And I'm curious for you whether it's in the container of, you mentioned earlier sort of employee and team member compensation and some sort of transparency around that, right? Or perhaps it's even in conversations with your clients, where there's maybe it's not so, I guess, for lack of a better term, like hush hush or quiet, keeping people out of the conversation in essence. Like what do these conversations about money, or how do they show up in your conversations, I guess is the question I'm curious about. Yeah, I know that's
I mean, internally or with clients or?
Well, it's both, right? Like, because it's, our conversations about money with ourselves come into the conversations that we have with our clients or our family members or our friends or whoever we're transacting with from a financial perspective. And so I get curious about, and maybe if you want to go to a very specific example, it's like, what does it actually look like to show team members compensation structure and have an open conversation about, like, hey, worker cooperative team, here's what salaries look like? Because typically that's like a behind closed doors, one-on-one thing. Nobody gets to know. There's sort of a don't ask, don't tell policy about it, right? But now we're talking about a different level of transparency around money. And it's a territory that we're not, not a lot of people are comfortable in, right? And so how are you navigating those conversations, whether it is with your client or your team member?
For team members, I'd say awkwardly. It's it's definitely a shift to, like, because yeah, the last choice is like, oh no, it is this like kind of personal thing. Whether it's like because the owner doesn't want different people to know, but just because like we're in a society of like, oh, it's this is your individual personal thing, and we don't want to share this information. I was much more comfortable sharing my salary than I was that my employees knowing each other's salaries. And so we kind of approached that from a I think it was a year or two ago. I was like, hey, we're going to move to be more transparent around salaries. Here's what I'm thinking. When we talk about this in 3 months, we will kind of, share and discuss. And does anybody have any issues or problems with that, or things that if you're not comfortable, you want to discuss it with me ahead of time? So not just like showing up and be like, here's all salaries, but prepping people ahead of time to, think about that and what that might mean and making sure they're comfortable with it. Everybody here was comfortable with it. And so it was at a team retreat kind of thing. It's like, okay, here's a worksheet. Here's our plans for next year. Here's our budget. Here's our current salaries. Here's how I've thought about salaries in terms of, what everybody should be earning and, what a living wage should be, and, what everybody's experience is, and, what is, more democratic. And so it's, I shouldn't be making, 4 times as much as, the lowest earning person. Why is there that disparity? If it is, okay, let's talk about it and think about what that means. And so then presenting all of that information, and I think everybody else feels just as awkwardly about it. And I think that's why the initial conversation was like, okay, that sounds good. Let's stop talking about this now. But just having those open conversations are awkward at first, and then hopefully people will have more feedback and think about it more critically, and we'll kind of grow together and work on those discussions. From a client perspective, a lot of kind of encouraging our clients to see our values and live our values. it's not necessarily be transparent with everything. Where worker co-op is not for everyone. We just want to make sure our clients are treating their employees well. And so our biggest thing is like, don't pay someone as a contractor when they should be an employee. Like, here's all the reasons why you shouldn't do that. And so that's probably the biggest conversation I have with small businesses. But then also, hey, here's some benefits you could offer. Here's an easy plan to do a easy platform to do a 401k. Hey, if you make it the benefits a little bit better, then you have less regulatory oversight. So why don't you think about this and that? And and just encouraging, like, I know you're having issues with turnover. It looks like, your salaries might not be at the right place, for your industry. And like, what could we do to get you to a healthier place for your employees? So just being open to those conversations and building those relationships with clients so that they are amenable to hearing those conversations as well.
I love that. It really just makes the whole topic more equitable and encourages people to speak their needs and become more comfortable having these conversations, which I think is something that we need to be talking about in the accounting profession more often. Here, we are getting paid to talk with people about their money, and yet at the same time, it's like, oh, we couldn't possibly talk about money. It's uncomfortable. Yet growth and change happen outside the comfort zone. How do we lean into that discomfort and recognize that that's what it's going to take for us to heal some of the inequity in our world and to encourage people to speak up and ask for what they need and advocate on their own behalf and for each other? And how do we fix this? And I love that you're creating a culture where yeah, we need to practice having these conversations, even when they're uncomfortable. So we have about 5 minutes before the top of the hour, and I want to just touch back on resources. And thank you so much for the ones that you listed earlier. And I want to toss a couple more resources in here that I don't know if you've heard of or not, especially as you're talking about the governance aspect of things and having these conversations and wanting to make sure that people are coming to consensus and that everyone's feeling heard. There's a wonderful organization called Sociocracy for All that teaches organizations how to have more sociocratic conversations and to bring that consensus-based decision making into the organizations. So if you haven't heard of SOFA, Sociocracy for All, before, look that up. And also, the Accounting Alchemy Network is a kind of a collaborative partner with the Next Economy MBA program. And Next Economy MBA is a project of the Lift Economy organization that is focusing on what does it look like to shift our economy to be more regenerative, to be a more full circle, well-being focused economy, recognizing that our current capitalist systems as they currently are, recognizing that there may be, more conscious ways of going about capitalism, whatever that might look like. How things are right now is extractive and exploitative, and how do we go about fixing it? And the Next Economy MBA program basically takes all of the things that we are not learning in a traditional MBA program about regenerative business practices and financial practices and how to weave these important conversations in and how to look at the extractive, exploitative elements and what can we do to heal them with our business choices. And that's exactly what they are teaching on. And I'm about to graduate from that program myself. Matthew, my co-founder, Alina, is just a handful of months into that program, and Matthew's looking forward to starting it also very soon. So we've got several members of the Accounting Alchemy Network who have joined us from the Next Economy MBA program. So that's another really fantastic resource. And they do talk about worker-owned cooperatives a bit in their education as well. Now,
Yeah,
before we
I'll
wrap up,
second that. They've got, I
yeah,
think probably because of the connection here, I bought their book and it's a great summary to have. Nice like desktop reference to like, okay, here's all these materials kind of like summarized into a nice, relatively short book. They've got a podcast too, I think. I've listened to a couple episodes that is really well done. And so yeah, I second the Next Economy organization.
oh, it's so good. And I want to throw one more question, recognizing that there's a bit of a risk of a rabbit hole tangent here, but I want to just touch on your niche with social justice organizations, because I know a lot of accounting professionals tend to shy away from nonprofits in large part because nonprofits are almost invariably led by a group of very well-meaning board of directors whose hearts are in the right place, but they have no idea what they're doing, and often they cannot agree to save their lives and are, constantly in a cash flow crunch. How have you successfully niched to having a good chunk of your revenue coming from nonprofit organizations, particularly social justice nonprofit organizations, and that is a successful book of business for you?
Whew. Um, the quick thing that not having all of the issues that nonprofits have is a fantastic opportunity to provide value. And so it's, as an outside expert, it's easier for us to come in and say, hey, you should do X, Y, and Z than it is for, a board member or an executive director or something like that. And so the biggest thing is to have a variety of size. We had too many small clients, and they're not well funded. They tend to be, even if they're very well intentioned, they're a little bit more dysfunctional because they don't have the right processes and systems and everything in place, and you will burn out trying to serve that type of client consistently. And so it's so we've in order to serve that, in order to keep a handful of those real small clients, and even the super small ones, like they have to have a payroll and like someone on staff to coordinate with in terms of accounting. Like we're not just doing like if anything below that, it's just you might as well just be doing things charitably. Like I do things charitably on the side that are just too small to have staff. So and so then we've kind of moved up market. We say we serve nonprofits between 500,000 and 5 million in revenue, and it's kind of like it's kind of a spectrum on that, or evenly distributed along that spectrum. So we have larger organizations that we're doing a lot of more higher end stuff and a lot more focus, but they've got the systems and processes and resources in place to be able to pay us and take our advice. And so that's how we've successfully been able to do it. And that takes a while. You can't just jump in and say, oh, I want to do this niche, because you're just going to get all the $100,000 nonprofits that can't afford to pay you. And so you've kind of got to, ease into it and make sure you're getting the right clients and the right mix of work. Because yeah, as much as, we want to support social justice and we want to support their mission and make the world a better place, we also need to pay our bills and keep the lights on. So it can't all be charitable work.
Thank you, Ryan. So I want to ask you one last question, and it's going to be sort of a short, quick response. So, and then I'll ask you to share with folks how they can get in touch with you before we officially wrap up. But I guess my one question for you is this: so we are talking about creating the future now, right? We're talking about a better, brighter, more beautiful future for not just ourselves personally, but our families, our friends, our neighborhoods, the planet, all the animals on it, like everything, right? It's a beautiful, bright future. And as you think about the position that we have as accounting professionals, right? And you think about really, frankly, the power that we have, right? And the influence that we can have on making this better future possible. What's the one thing, imagine you're in front of a room full of thousands of accountants right now. What's the one thing that you would want to say to them all to inspire them, remind them, inform them, light them up, or even just give them a pearl of wisdom before they go onto their lives to create the impact they want to see in the world? What would that sort of soundbite be?
Oh goodness. So yeah, your role and position as an accountant, because of the technical expertise you have and because it's such a sensitive issue, and it creates a lot of trust with clients, and so they trust because they have to. There's all, oh, it's the trusted advisor. It's even a cliche, and so, but it is true. Clients trust what you tell them because of your knowledge and your relationship with them, and so you have a lot of power in terms of advising them on how to make the world a better place as well. And so you have to find what works for every client. Employees is a great way to start. Most clients have employees, and most of them are either not paying them correctly or paying them enough or not providing proper benefits. So just kind of like reminders here or there. It's like, hey, I see you brought this person on as a contractor. Again, they're technically not a contractor, and you should pay them as an employee so they get proper benefits, and so they could get paid a living wage. Here's some resources on paying people living wages. Have you thought about implementing these in your business? And sorry, that's a bit of a tangent, but it's like you have the power to convince your clients that they can make the world a better place by small nudges through your expertise.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And as we like to remind folks around here, right, with great power comes great responsibility. I know that's from the Spider-Man, what a Marvel's some universe. Anyways, but on that note, right, for those of you, so accountants out there, you're watching this. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for tuning in. Ryan, where can people go to learn more about you?
Right now, it's a LinkedIn. We are in the middle of a new website and a new name and everything else. So don't try to search for me online. Just go to LinkedIn. I'm there, and eventually we will have a nice new website built for a more cooperative organization that doesn't have my name attached to it. And so that's what we're working on.
Good. So we'll make sure to put your LinkedIn info in the description below for folks who are looking to connect with you. And for those of you out there who have questions and want to ask more questions, please feel free to put them in the comments here. If you're watching this on Hilo, start a conversation. If this is in one of our social media networks, whether it's on Facebook or LinkedIn, please start a dialogue and let us know what you think. We would love to see more people talking about this conversation here and some of the things embedded in it. And if, again, you're new to the community and you like what you heard, go to our website. Again, I'll put that down in the area below, whichever platform we're on. And with that, have a beautiful afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you all. Go out there and wield your power responsibly.
Yes.
Ciao.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you too.